I never imagined the day I would walk into my own home and find a stranger dancing in my living room, twirling, spinning, barefoot on my marble floors, humming a soft tune as if she owned the place. Worse still, she wasn't even facing me. She was facing my son, my paralyzed, silent, motionless boy, sitting stiffly in his wheelchair, his head tilted slightly as if listening. The scene stunned me into stillness. A girl, no, a young woman, maybe 19 or 20, her braids tied in a loose bun, her clothes simple and worn, the kind you don't see in Santon estates unless someone is cleaning or delivering something. Yet here she was, dancing boldly before my child like she had been invited. I felt something hot flare up in my chest. I stepped forward sharply. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice slicing through the room like broken glass. "And what in God's name are you doing in my house?" She froze mid-motion, one arm extended, one foot lifted, like a bird caught between flight and capture. Slowly she lowered her leg and turned around. Her eyes, large, dark, frightened, met mine, and in that moment she looked like a child caught stealing bread. I'm sorry, sir," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I didn't mean to." "Didn't mean to what?" I thundered. "Break into my home? Trespass? Stand in front of my son and dance as if this is some kind of circus?" Her hands twisted together nervously. The gate was open. "I only came to—" I didn't let her finish. "Do you think this is a game? Johannesburg is not a village road where you wander into people's compounds." She flinched at the harshness in my tone. Good. She ought to be afraid. Anybody who could sneak past train security and slip into the home of Wandile Makona, billionaire industrialist, was either foolish or dangerous. At that moment, my son let out a faint breath, a soft exhale, the only sound his broken nervous system allowed him. The girl immediately glanced at him, and something gentle passed over her face. It irritated me. I moved between them, blocking her view. "If you take one more step toward my boy, I will have security drag you out by your hair. Do you hear me?" She swallowed hard, eyes glistening. "I wasn't hurting him. You shouldn't even be here." My voice startled even me. Ever since the accident, my emotions lived close to the surface. Raw, volatile, unpredictable. I hated weakness, especially my own, so I always covered it with anger. She took a tiny step back. "I know, sir. And I'm really sorry. I only wanted to help." "Help?" The word tasted bitter. "Do you look like a physiotherapist? A neurologist? A specialist from the rehab center? Do you even have basic qualifications to stand near him?" She shook her head, embarrassed. "No, sir." "Exactly. So what made you believe you could waltz into my home and attempt whatever this nonsense is?" Her chin trembled. "I wasn't waltzing, sir. I was dancing." I stared at her, stunned by her nerve. She noticed and quickly dropped her gaze again. "I'm sorry. I should not have corrected you." Something inside me snapped. "What is your name?" "Thandika," she whispered. "Thandika what?" "Just Thandika." "That's not a surname," I barked. She hesitated, then dropped her voice even lower. "I don't use my father's name." I scoffed. "That's not my concern." I took a step forward, towering over her. She was small, petite, fragile-looking, but there was a quiet strength in the way she held her shoulders, as though poverty had battered her but hadn't broken her entirely. My eyes swept over her clothes, faded jeans, a loose top, slippers so thin they were nearly worn through. Not a thief, I thought. Not a spy. She looked too terrified, too honest. Still, honesty didn't excuse trespassing. "How did you enter?" I asked sharply. "The back gate, sir." "It was open." I clenched my teeth. "It is never open. Ever." Her lips tightened. "It was today. That meant my staff were careless. Again. I would deal with them later." "What exactly were you doing with my son?" I pressed. Her voice softened. "I was dancing for him." My brows shot upward. "Why?" She licked her lips nervously. "Because, sometimes, music and movement help people who cannot speak. It stimulates the mind and can bring small changes in the body's response. My grandmother used to say the body listens even when it cannot talk." I stared at her. "Who told you my son needed music and movement?" She pointed faintly toward the chair beside him, the one holding a small portable speaker. "You left music on," she said. "A soft instrumental. When I was passing the street outside, I heard it through the open gate. Sounded sad. And I thought maybe someone needed company." I blinked. She came inside my estate because she heard music? This was the most ridiculous thing I had ever heard. "You expect me to believe that?" I scoffed. She wrung her hands helplessly. "It's the truth, sir. I wasn't planning to steal anything. I have nothing. I only wanted to see who was playing such sorrowful music in such a big house. The words hit me harder than I expected. Such sorrowful music in such a big house. Yes, that described my life perfectly now. I let my eyes drift to my son, my only child, my miracle boy, sitting rigid in his wheelchair. 7 months had passed since the accident. 7 months since a drunk driver crushed the back of our SUV. 7 months since the doctors told me my lively, laughing, soccer-loving son would never walk again. 7 months of therapies, specialists, expensive machines from Europe, all to watch him remain a statue with a heartbeat. I swallowed. No, I wasn't going down that path today. I turned sharply back to the girl. You will leave immediately. Her face fell. Yes, sir. Wait outside for security. You will explain everything to them. She nodded and began to walk toward the door, but something made her look over her shoulder at my son again. And that was when it happened. My son blinked. Not a normal blink, no. This one was different, sharper. His gaze shifted ever so slightly, following her. My breath caught. She noticed too, her eyes widening. He looked at me. Don't be ridiculous, I snapped, though my heart thudded. He has involuntary reflexes. But I knew my son's reflexes. I had memorized them. This was not one of them. She clasped her hands to her chest. He followed the movement, sir. I saw it. My voice rose again. Enough. Don't start giving me false hope. I'm not, she insisted, her voice cracking. I swear I'm not. When I was dancing, his fingers, they twitched. I froze. Her eyes were pleading, desperate for me to believe her. I hated how much I wanted to believe her too. Sir, she whispered, maybe, just maybe, dance can help him. Music can help him. Movement can help him. You don't have to trust me. You don't even have to like me. But if something happened just now, isn't that worth looking at? My throat tightened. I wanted to dismiss her. I wanted to throw her out. I wanted to ignore this tiny spark she was daring to light in my dark, hopeless world. But I couldn't ignore my son's face. Not when I had just seen something stir behind those empty eyes. A tremor of fear and hope warred inside me. I spoke slowly. You will leave this house now. And you will never enter again. Her shoulders sagged. But, I added quietly, you will come back tomorrow? Her head snapped up, eyes wide. Sir? You heard me, I said gruffly. I don't know what you did, or what you think you did, but I will not risk missing even the slightest chance for my son. She blinked rapidly, tears forming. Yes, sir. I'll come. I straightened my suit jacket, masking the storm inside me. But understand this clearly, if you lie, if you steal, if you do anything foolish, I will end whatever opportunity you think you've found here. She nodded furiously. I won't, sir. I promise. And another thing, I added. Tomorrow you will not enter through any open gate. You will come through the main entrance and security will identify you properly. Yes, sir. And you will not dance without my permission. A shy, barely there smile tugged at her lips. I will wait, sir. Good. Now leave. She backed away, clutching her bag to her chest, then slipped out of the door, disappearing down the hallway. I turned back to my son. His eyes still rested on the last spot she had stood, and for the first time in 7 long months, I felt the faintest whisper of hope. A dangerous hope. A hope that terrified me. But a hope nonetheless. I exhaled shakily. What on earth just happened? I murmured to the silent room. My son did not answer. But somehow, it felt like he wanted to. Sleep refused to come that night. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling of my penthouse bedroom, replaying every moment of the encounter with the strange girl, Thandika, the barefoot intruder with trembling hands and a dancer's grace. My mind kept circling back to the same 2 impossible images. My son's gaze following her. And the slight, unmistakable twitch of his fingers. 2 tiny motions. 2 sparks in a darkness I had convinced myself would never lift. I turned over, squeezing my eyes shut, but the thoughts refused to let me rest. My son had been unresponsive for months. He blinked, yes, but empty blinks, absent blinks, blinks that meant nothing. He breathed. He stared. But he did not react to voices, to colors, to therapists, to anything. Yet he reacted to her? I rubbed my temples as sunrise crept faintly through the curtains. My heart longed to believe it, but my mind feared belief itself. Hope was a fragile thing. Too fragile for a man who had built his life on control, certainty, and dominance. Yet after the accident, every ounce of control had slipped through my fingers. My son had become a living reminder of everything I failed to protect. And now an unknown girl had walked into my home like a spirit and stirred something I had not seen in months. What did that mean? Who was she? Why did her face linger so heavily in my thoughts? By 7 a.m. I stopped pretending I could rest. I showered, dressed, and headed downstairs. The house was quiet as usual. Too quiet. There was a time, before the accident, when my son would run through the halls every morning, laughing, demanding that I chase him despite being dressed for work. Now the walls only echoed with the sterile beeps of medical equipment and the hush of caregivers who walked softly, as if the house itself was in mourning. I entered the therapy room where my son lay in his wheelchair, eyes fixed on nothing. I gently touched his shoulder. "Morning, boy," I whispered. He didn't move. But I had grown used to that. I checked his limbs for any sign of unusual stiffness. Nothing. I sighed and sat beside him. I had meetings that day, important ones, but I didn't have the energy for business. Not when something bigger was tugging at my conscience. At 9 a.m., my head of security, Mandla, entered the room. A big, muscular man with a shaved head. Mandla looked like he could wrestle a lion and win. "Morning, sir," he greeted with his deep, steady voice. "How did that girl get in yesterday?" I asked sharply. He winced. "We investigated, sir. The back maintenance gate had a faulty latch. It didn't close properly after the gardener took out the trash. She must have noticed." "Inexcusable," I snapped. "That gate should never be loose. Ever. We've already repaired it, sir. And I've issued disciplinary action to the responsible staff." I nodded, though my mind was elsewhere. "And the girl?" I pressed. "Did anyone see her leave the estate?" "Yes, sir. One of the perimeter guards saw her walking out toward the main road. She didn't have a vehicle." "Of course she didn't. She looked like she barely had transport fare." "And her background?" I asked. Manla hesitated. "You asked us to run her details after she left yesterday, but sir, she didn't give a surname. And without identification we couldn't trace her." I exhaled slowly. "She said she will return today," I murmured. "Yes, sir. We will ensure she enters properly this time." I studied my son again. His eyes stared blankly ahead, but something inside me insisted that he was different today. More alert. More present. Perhaps it was simply the hope I tried to suppress. At lunchtime I sat by the large dining table but barely touched my food. My appetite had vanished months ago. All I wanted was to see if the impossible would happen again. Would she really come back? By 2 p.m. anxiety curled in my stomach. What if she didn't? What if yesterday was a fluke? What if she changed her mind? Or worse, what if she had lied completely? No, she didn't seem like a liar. Foolish. Bull. Poor. Nervous. Innocent. But not a liar. At 3 p.m. Mandla appeared again. "Sir," he said, "there's a young woman at the gate asking for you. Says her name is Thandika." My heart jumped before I could hide it. "Let her in," I said quickly. Mandla studied me with a faint, curious expression but didn't question it. He bowed slightly and left. A few minutes later, the door to the main living room opened. She stepped inside, looking smaller than I remembered, wearing the same faded jeans and worn slippers, clutching a small plastic bag to her chest. She paused at the threshold, eyes scanning the lavish decor with a mixture of awe and terror. Her voice trembled. "Good afternoon, sir." I kept my tone stiff. "You're on time." "I tried not to be late," she murmured. "I don't want to cause trouble." "You already caused enough trouble," I replied coldly, though my voice lacked the sharpness it had yesterday. She lowered her gaze. "I understand." I gestured toward the therapy room. "Come." She followed me silently down the hall. Her steps were light, almost too quiet for someone with no training in silence. When we entered the room, she halted beside the door, eyes softening when she saw my son. "He looks peaceful," she whispered. "He looks unconscious," I corrected. She flinched but didn't argue. I folded my arms. "You said you believed music and movement can stimulate him. Show me." Her eyebrows rose slightly. "You want me to dance? Here. In front of you? Do you see anyone else in the room?" She swallowed, nodding. "I only ask one thing," I added. "No touching him." "I wouldn't dare, sir," she said quickly. I moved aside, watching closely, ready to intervene at the slightest mistake. She placed her small, cheap speaker on the floor and pulled out her cracked phone. She scrolled for a moment until a gentle instrumental beat, African drums mixed with soft piano, filled the room. Then she stepped into the open space, took a long breath and began to move. Her dance wasn't polished. It wasn't professional, but it was alive. She danced like someone who used motion to survive pain. Every sway of her hips, every stretch of her arms carried a story. Her movements were slow, graceful, filled with emotion. She closed her eyes, letting the rhythm pull her into a world I could not understand. The room softened around her. Even the light seemed gentler. And then, something shifted. My son blinked again. Not the empty blink of reflex, but the focused blink of recognition. I stepped closer, breath caught. "Do it again," I whispered. She didn't hear me, but she twirled lightly, her hands rising like wings. My son's eyes followed the motion. My throat tightened painfully. "Boy," I murmured, kneeling before him, "can you hear me? Are you seeing her?" For a moment, just a moment, his fingers curled. The faintest movement. Barely visible. But real. Real. I lowered my head, squeezing the edge of the wheelchair to steady myself. Thandika slowly stopped dancing, unsure. Her voice was timid. "Did he?" "Yes," I said hoarsely. "He did." Her lips parted. "Sir, that's good. That's very good." I stood abruptly. No assumptions. No excitement. Nothing is certain. "But something happened," she whispered. "I know," I admitted. "And that terrifies me." She looked at me with gentle understanding, more understanding than a girl her age should possess. After a long silence, I exhaled sharply. "Tell me the truth, Thandika. Why does a girl from the township know about neurological stimulation through dance? Who taught you that?" Her eyes drifted downward. "My grandmother, sir." "And who was she?" "A traditional healer, but also a caregiver. She worked with people who were sick or disabled. She believed movement could touch the spirit when the body could not." I raised a brow. "So you're not trained. You're following old myths." She shook her head firmly. "It's not a myth, sir. Movement is medicine. You can see it." She gestured faintly toward my son. I looked at him again. He blinked once more, a blink that looked suspiciously like intention. Emotion surged inside me. Hope, fear, anger at myself for hoping, gratitude I couldn't admit out loud. I cleared my throat. "You will return tomorrow." Her eyes widened. "Again?" "Yes." She hesitated. "Sir, may I ask something?" "No." Her hands curled nervously. "Please, sir. Just one thing." I exhaled impatiently. "What?" Can you tell me his name?" I stiffened. No one outside close family and medical staff had spoken his name since the accident. It felt sacred, fragile, exposed. But she had earned something today, something small. I spoke slowly. "His name is..." My voice caught unexpectedly. I swallowed. "Saifo." Her face softened. "Saifo," she repeated gently as though savoring the sound. "It's a beautiful name." I turned away because my eyes were burning. I didn't want her to see. "We are done for today," I said quickly. "Manla will escort you out." She bowed her head. "Yes, sir. Thank you." As she walked toward the door, my son's eyes followed her again, faintly, subtly but unmistakably. And for the second day in a row, my chest filled with a dangerous, terrifying, impossible feeling. Hope. By the third day, I had grown used to the strange flutter of anticipation that settled in my chest each afternoon. It irritated me. I wasn't a man who anticipated anything. People anticipated me. They waited on me, depended on me, feared me, respected me. I was the one who moved the world, not the one who sat waiting for it to move toward me. Yet there I was, sitting beside my son at exactly 2:58 p.m., pretending to scroll through business reports while secretly listening for footsteps in the hallway. I didn't have to wait long. Manla knocked once, then opened the door. "Sir," he said with a tone I couldn't quite decipher, "she's here." I didn't need him to specify who she was. I cleared my throat, gathering myself. "Let her in." When Thandika stepped into the room, she looked different, not in the physical sense but in her presence. She held herself with a bit more confidence than the previous days, though the humility remained. Her braids were neatly redone, tied back with a faded ribbon. Her clothes were still modest, second-hand certainly, but freshly washed and ironed as if she'd spent the morning preparing carefully to appear respectable. "Good afternoon, sir," she said quietly. My response came out harsher than intended. "You're late." She blinked, startled. "No, sir, it's exactly 3 o'clock." Damn, she was right. I glanced at the wall clock, 3 o'clock on the dot. Mandla shot me a questioning look, and I dismissed him with a wave of my hand. Thandika stepped closer to Saifo's wheelchair. How is he today? Unchanged, I said flatly. But yesterday doesn't leave my mind. Her gaze softened. Mine too. She pulled out her little speaker, then hesitated. May I? Yes, I said more quickly than I meant to. She pressed play. A slow, rhythmic beat filled the room. African drums again, soft, earthy, grounding. She took her place in the small open space and began to move. Today her dance was more controlled. Deliberate. Measured. There was emotion, yes, but also caution, as if she was trying to understand how Saipho responded. She moved her hands in slow arcs, lifted her feet lightly, swayed with gentle rhythm. She's adjusting, I thought. She was trying to learn him. I watched Saipho closely. His eyes tracked her again, subtle but consistent. I noticed slight changes in his breathing too. A tiny increase when she moved quickly, a slight calming when she slowed. It wasn't much, but it was more response than we'd had in months. At one point she turned sharply and raised both arms, graceful, fluid. Saipho's right finger twitched. This time I saw it clearly. No doubt. No imagination. Oh my God, I whispered. She froze instantly and turned to me. Did he do something? I nodded slowly, disbelief and awe colliding inside me. His finger moved. She dropped her hands to her mouth. That's wonderful, sir. I wasn't ready to say wonderful, but something inside me cracked open anyway. I approached Saipho, crouching beside him. Boy, I murmured, are you hearing her? Are you connecting with her? His eyes blinked slowly, a blink that looked dangerously close to intention. I exhaled shakily. He's responding. For the first time, I allowed myself to say it out loud. Her voice softened. Yes, sir. He is. She knelt beside us gently, not touching him, just lowering herself to his height. I think he's trying, she whispered. Somewhere inside he's trying to come back to you. My throat tightened. I had spent 7 months longing for exactly those words. 7 months of treatments, doctors, painful therapies, empty promises. Yet here was a poor girl from the township giving me more hope in 3 days than a multimillion-rand medical team. It terrified me. I stood abruptly, straightening my shirt. Enough for today. She blinked. Already? He's tired, I lied. The truth was I was tired. Tired of feeling, tired of hoping, tired of letting my guard fall because of a stranger. She turned off the speaker and stood slowly, confused but respectful. Yes, sir. I gestured to Mandla. Escort her. But when she reached the doorway, her hand hesitated on the frame. She glanced back. Sir, she said softly, can I ask something? No, I replied instinctively. She swallowed. It's not about me. It's about Saipho. I stiffened. Ask, I said warily. What caused his paralysis? A heavy silence filled the room. I hadn't talked about it, not fully, not even with people close to me. The story sat like a stone inside my chest, cold and heavy. But for some reason her question didn't feel intrusive. Felt sincere. A car accident, I said eventually, voice low. 7 months ago. She nodded gently. I'm sorry. I couldn't look at her. I kept my eyes on Saipho. My wife was driving, I added quietly. She froze. I continued before emotion ruined my composure. The drunk driver hit them from the side. My wife, my voice cracked. I clenched my jaw. She died on impact. Saipho survived, but the trauma to his spinal cord was severe. A tear slipped down Thandika's cheek. She brushed it away quickly, almost embarrassed. Sir, that must have been so painful. It still is, I murmured. For a moment the room fell silent. No sound but the soft hum of Saipho's breathing. Finally I straightened. We're done for today. She nodded again, but instead of leaving immediately she said something I didn't expect. Sir, I know you're hurting. But don't shut your heart to him. My jaw tightened. I haven't. You have, she said softly, respectfully yet truthfully. You're afraid to hope. I can see it. My pulse quickened with annoyance and recognition. You don't know me, I said coolly. No, sir, she agreed gently. But I can see pain. And yours is very heavy. I turned away sharply. Good day, Thandika. She bowed her head. Good day, sir. Good day, Saipho. When she left, I stood there in the silence, wrestling with emotions I didn't want to feel. She had seen too much. That evening, I found myself sitting alone in my home office with a glass of whiskey untouched beside me. The city lights of Johannesburg sparkled through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The night air hummed, distant cars flowing like a river of movement far below. My phone buzzed. It was my sister, Nalathando. I ignored the call. She called again. I answered. Wandile, she said without greeting, her tone laced with frustration. Why haven't you called me back this week? I've been busy. Busy doing what? Mourning alone in that cold mansion while your son sits there suffering? You think that's helpful? I rubbed my forehead. Not today, Lulu. No, she snapped, today especially. I heard from one of your staff. You let some stranger girl into the house? A dancer? A township girl? What madness is that? My breath caught. Who told you? I have my ways, and I want to know what's going on. Are you all right? Are you losing yourself? I clenched my jaw. You don't understand. Then explain it. How could I explain something I barely understood myself? She makes him respond, I said finally. Saifo reacts to her. There was a long pause on the line. You're serious? She whispered. Yes. Then show the doctors, she urged. Show the therapists. Don't rely on a stranger from the streets. She's not a danger. How do you know? You don't even know her last name. Her words stung because they were true. Brother, she added softly, you're vulnerable right now. You're lonely. Be careful who you let near your son. I remained silent. Promise me, she demanded, you won't let your emotions cloud your judgment. I closed my eyes. I promise nothing, I said quietly, then hung up. But her warning stuck with me. The next morning I found myself staring at Saifo again, noticing subtle changes in him, tiny ones but they're nonetheless. His eyelids didn't droop as heavily. His breathing seemed less distant. Something in him felt awake. And it was because of her. Who was she? What did she want? Why did the universe send her into my home? I didn't know. But I knew one thing. I needed her back. The following day when the clock struck 3, she walked in again, timid but hopeful. And for the first time I allowed myself to say something simple. Something human. Good afternoon, Thandika. She looked startled, then smiled softly, a small shy smile that felt like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Good afternoon, sir. And Saifo's eyes brightened, as if greeting her too. I did not sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes I saw the girl, the dancer, spinning in the glow of the evening sun, the skirts of her faded Ankara dress lifting like petals around her. And then I heard my son's laughter. A sound I had not heard in months. A sound I had begun to believe I might never hear again. And so I sat in the darkness of my study, Johannesburg's night lights spilling through the blinds, and I stared at the CCTV footage again and again. My security team had sent it to me privately, probably thinking I wanted evidence to press charges. But that wasn't what I wanted. What I wanted, I did not yet fully understand. Because every time she appeared on the screen, a slim girl, no older than 22 or 23, with a glowing brown complexion and bright, brave eyes, my chest tightened. Not with desire. Not with pity. But with something I had forgotten how to feel. Hope. Hope for my son. Hope for something beyond the confines of our cold, silent mansion. Hope that maybe, just maybe, healing did not always come through the paths money paved. I rubbed my forehead and sighed. I needed answers. I needed to know who she was, where she came from, and why in the world a girl like that would choose to sneak into the home of South Africa's most reclusive billionaire without fear. So at dawn I called James, my head of security. Boss, he answered, voice heavy with sleep. Find her. Sir? The girl. From the pool house camera. I want her name, her home, everything. Before noon. He cleared his throat. Should I send the police ahead? Just in case she's part of a syndicate. No, I snapped more sharply than intended. No police. No threats. Just find her. He hesitated. Yes, sir. I ended the call. For a moment I sat still, listening to the quiet hum of the refrigerator down the hall. This house was too large for silence. Too cold for a family that had been broken long before tragedy struck. I checked the time. Almost 5 a.m. I stood and made my way to Liam's room. When I opened the door, I found him awake, eyes open, staring at the ceiling as though lost in a faraway universe only he could see. His small, fragile frame lay still, a blanket gently covering his legs that hadn't moved in a full year. I walked to his bedside and sat down. Morning, son, I murmured, brushing his curly hair back. He blinked slowly. A soft sound escaped his throat, halfway between a sigh and a whimper. Then, suddenly, I saw something shift in his gaze. A spark. A questioning. As though he remembered something. Someone. Are you thinking about the girl? I whispered. No response. But I knew. because even as I held his hand I saw his fingers twitch. And though the doctor said his movement was purely reflexive, a meaningless misfire of nerves, I didn't believe it. Not after yesterday. Not after witnessing the pure joy on his face as he watched her dance. I swallowed hard. "I'll find her," I promised him softly. "I'll bring her back. And this time, I'll do it right." James called me at 11:07 a.m. "Sir, we found her." I felt my breath catch. "Name?" "Ayanda Dlomo. Lives in an informal settlement near Soweto. 23 years old. Dancer part-time. Works at a small bakery. No criminal record. Lost her parents, young." My eyes softened. "Where is she now?" I asked. "Outside her workplace. But boss, she's scared. We approached gently like you said, but she still thinks you want to arrest her." I exhaled slowly. Of course she'd think that. "Put her on the phone." There was rustling, then a soft, trembling voice. "Hello." Her voice struck me like a warm breeze, gentle, melodic, but edged with fear. "Ayanda," I said quietly, trying not to sound intimidating. "This is Mr. Du Toit." Silence. Then a tiny gasp. "I'm so sorry, sir. Please, I didn't mean to trespass, I didn't mean to cause any trouble." "Ayanda," I interrupted, keeping my voice as steady as I could. "I'm not angry." She froze. I could feel her confusion through the line. "I just want to talk," I said. "Will you give me a chance to do that?" Another silence. "Talk?" she whispered. "Why would a man like you want to talk to someone like me?" The question hit harder than I expected. "Because my son smiled yesterday," I said. "For the first time in a very long time. And you were the reason." Her breath hitched audibly. He smiled." "He did." She let out a small sob, quickly muffled as though embarrassed to be heard crying. "Please," I said softly. "Just come with my driver. 20 minutes of your time. That's all I'm asking for." Another pause. Then, "Okay." Relief washed over me. "I'll be waiting." Ayanda arrived 40 minutes later, escorted into the living room by a housekeeper who kept glancing at her as though unsure whether she belonged or was simply lost. I stood from the couch when she entered. She was even smaller than I remembered. Slim, graceful, with soft, expressive eyes. She wore a simple navy dress, faded slightly at the seams, and shoes that had clearly seen too many Johannesburg pavements. But she stood tall. Proud. Nervous, but not defeated. She bowed her head slightly. "Good afternoon, sir." "Thank you for coming," I said, gesturing to the seat across from me. She sat carefully, hands clasped on her lap. "I want to apologize," she began instantly. "I shouldn't have come into your yard. I only wanted to dance where nobody would see me. I didn't intend." "Ayanda," I said gently, "stop apologizing." She froze again. And for the first time she lifted her eyes fully to meet mine. I did not see guilt. I did not see fear. I saw bravery wrapped in poverty, something I had forgotten existed. I leaned forward slightly. "Why were you dancing there?" I asked. Her throat bobbed. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Finally she whispered, "Because it's the only place I feel free." Something twisted in my chest. "Free from what?" She hesitated. "From life," she said quietly. "From everything life keeps taking from me." I exhaled slowly. Then I asked the question that had been burning inside me since yesterday. "And why did you dance for my son?" She blinked fast. "I didn't know he was watching. Not until I turned around." "I swear, sir, I didn't mean." "No," I said even more gently. "After you realized he was there, why didn't you run? Why did you stay and dance for him instead?" Her lips parted. Her eyes grew shiny. And she whispered, "Because he looked like he needed joy." My heart stumbled. I swallowed, suddenly unable to speak. Ayanda lowered her head slightly, voice trembling. "Sometimes you see someone who is hurting. And you can't walk away. Even if it's risky. Even if it's foolish. Even if you get nothing in return." She wiped her eyes quickly. "I only wanted to give him 5 minutes of happiness." I stared at her. This girl, this stranger, had given more to my son in 5 minutes than a team of doctors, therapists, and specialists had managed in an entire year. I cleared my throat. "Ayanda," I said quietly, "I want you to meet him." Her head snapped up. "Sir, I don't know if I should." "I'm not asking you to perform," I said softly. "Just to meet him. To see him. That's all." She swallowed hard. Looked toward the hallway. Then nodded. "Okay," she whispered. I stood and gestured for her to follow me. But before we reached his room, I paused at the door and turned to her. "One thing before you go inside." She looked up at me, eyes wide. "You don't have to be afraid of me," I said quietly. "I'm not here to punish you. I'm here to understand you." She blinked rapidly, then nodded again. I opened the door. And everything that happened next would change all our lives forever. The moment I opened the door to Liam's room, Ayanda hesitated at the threshold, like someone stepping into holy ground. I watched her eyes scan everything. The soft blue walls, the medical equipment tucked discreetly in corners, the large windows letting in the Johannesburg sun. And finally, my son. Liam lay where he always did, quiet, still, his curly hair spread gently over his pillow, his eyes half-focused as though drifting between worlds. Ayanda pressed a hand to her chest. Oh God," she whispered. Something broke inside me. Not pity. Not shame. But a raw ache that someone outside this house could look at my boy and see him, not just his paralysis. I stepped beside her. "It's okay," I murmured. She nodded slowly, tears already gathering. Then very gently she walked toward him. "May I?" she asked softly. "Of course," I said. She rounded the bed until Liam could see her clearly. "Hi," she whispered. "It's me, the girl who likes to dance where she shouldn't." To my astonishment, Liam's eyes widened. Not much, just a flicker. But enough that anyone who knew him would see the change. Ayanda gasped. "He remembers me," she breathed. I swallowed. "Yes," I said quietly. "He does." She reached forward slowly, giving him time to react, then touched his hand. "Hi, little warrior." Her voice, the warmth of it, moved through the room like sunlight breaking through clouds. And then it happened. Liam blinked twice. A tiny sound escaped him, a broken hum. Ayanda's tears spilled immediately. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered, "don't cry. I'm right here." I turned my face slightly, trying to blink away my own emotion. How could a stranger do this? How could she reach him in ways no one else ever had? She pulled a small cloth from her handbag and wiped his cheek gently. "He's so beautiful," she said softly. "So strong." I clenched my jaw. People rarely called my son strong anymore. Fragile, pitiful, tragic, yes. But strong? No. Only this girl. After a few minutes, Ayanda turned to me. "Sir, I don't want to overstep. But, can I show him something?" I hesitated. "What is it?" She stepped back and pulled a small speaker from her bag. Cheap, scratched, clearly secondhand but well-loved. "Music," she said simply. "It helps children who feel trapped in their own bodies. I used to use it when my little brother got sick, before he—" Her voice cracked. I finished the sentence gently. "Before he passed?" She nodded, lips trembling. I sighed. "Play it." She placed the speaker beside the window and switched it on. A soft, rhythmic melody filled the room, the kind that tugged at memories and loosened tight hearts. Something between Afro soul and lullaby. Ayanda didn't dance at first. She just swayed lightly like a mother calming a child. And then she did something that stunned me. She moved to the side of the bed. No. And took Liam's limp hand between both of hers. "Listen," she whispered. "Feel it." I held my breath. The music washed over him, warm, gentle, familiar in a way I couldn't understand. Ayanda guided his fingers very lightly, helping them mimic the beat. Barely a movement. Just a ghost of a rhythm. But Liam's eyelids fluttered. His throat tightened. And then, his finger twitched. Not a spasm. Not a reflex. A response. Ayanda cried softly. "Oh baby, you're trying. You're really trying." I had to grip the back of Liam's wheelchair to steady myself. Hope was a dangerous thing. It made your heart grow too big too fast. It made you greedy for miracles. But right then, watching my son respond to music, to her, I didn't care. Ayanda looked back at me. "Sir, he needs movement. He needs joy. He needs company. People who aren't afraid of him. People who don't talk around him like he isn't here." I froze. Because she was right. This house had become a tomb. A museum of grief. And Liam was trapped in it with me. "I can help," she whispered. "If you'll let me." Her voice shook, not from fear but sincerity. "I don't want money. I don't want anything from you. I only want him to feel alive again." My throat tightened painfully. I walked to the window, staring out at the wide Johannesburg skyline. Cars moved below. People rushed to work. Life continued, oblivious to the moment unfolding in my son's room. After a long silence, I finally spoke. "Ayanda, what do you want in return?" She blinked. "For helping him?" "Nothing. No, I turned to face her. For yourself. Her lips parted. Her shoulders straightened. And she whispered the truth. I want to dance again. I frowned. But you do dance. She shook her head. No, sir. I hide. I borrow corners of the world nobody cares about. I dance where no one pays attention, because life taught me early that dreams are for people who can afford disappointment. The words cut me. Deeply. She continued, voice trembling. I left school at 16. I take care of 2 cousins who lost their parents. I work double shifts at a bakery just to buy electricity. Dancing, it's the only thing that keeps me alive. But I don't have time. Or training. Or opportunity. And every day I feel it slipping away. A tear rolled down her cheek. I want a chance. Just once. To not feel like my life is something I have to survive instead of live. Her honesty stunned me. She wasn't begging. She wasn't even asking. She was confessing. I inhaled deeply. Ayanda, I said carefully, you've done something for my son no one else has managed. I can't ignore that. She frowned slightly, unsure where I was going. I want to hire you, I said, as his personal movement companion. She blinked. Movement? Companion? It's a role I invented 30 seconds ago, I admitted. But it fits what he needs. Not a nurse. Not a therapist. Someone who can bring him out of himself. Someone he responds to. Her eyes widened, filling with disbelief. Sir, you can't be serious. I am. But I'm not trained. I don't know anything about medical conditions. I live in a shack. I don't own fancy clothes. I can't speak to rich people. Ayanda, I interrupted gently, I'm not hiring you to be rich. I'm hiring you because you made my son smile. She covered her mouth, overwhelmed. I would pay you a proper salary, I continued. Full-time or part-time, your choice. You'd have transport arranged. Meals in the house. And you'd work closely with his doctors and therapists. Her hands shook violently. I don't know what to say, she whispered. You can say yes. She let out a laugh, a wet, broken, disbelieving sound. But sir, people like you don't hire people like me. Something cold moved through me. That's because people like me are fools, I said quietly. But not today. Today I am a father. Nothing more. Ayanda's tears fell freely now. She looked at Liam, then at me, then back at Liam. And slowly, hesitantly, she nodded. Yes, she whispered. I'll do it. My heart pounded harder than it had in months. Thank you, I breathed. Ayanda wiped her face. When do I start? Now, I said. She looked shocked. Now? Yes. My son has waited long enough. She laughed through her tears, covering her face in disbelief. But then, just as she lowered her hands, Liam made a small sound. A soft, breathy noise, like a tiny attempt at laughter. Ayanda froze. Did he? Yes, I whispered, voice thick. He did. She turned back to him. Well then, she said gently, taking his hand again, let's begin. And as I stood there watching the two of them, my broken son and the girl who brought him light, I felt something shift inside me. Something dangerous. Something hopeful. Something I wasn't ready to name. But one thing was certain. Nothing in our lives would ever be the same again. The following week became a blur of cautious hope and careful observation. Ayanda arrived each day promptly, her small presence commanding more attention than anyone would have imagined. She carried with her a kind of quiet authority, one that grew not from wealth or training, but from instinct, compassion, and sheer courage. I watched her carefully, noting how she adjusted the simplest movements to encourage Liam. A flick of her wrist, a sway of her shoulders, a soft hum under her breath, it all mattered. Each time Liam responded, another blink, a subtle twitch, a small sigh, my chest constricted. I had lived months in despair, but now there was proof. He remembered joy. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't dramatic. But it was real. And yet, the deeper the progress, the more my mind spiraled. Ayanda's story had begun to leak into my conscience. I thought about her life. The shack, the lost parents, the cousins she supported, the constant grind of survival. And I realized something unsettling. I had power. She had none. I had money, influence, connections. And here she was, voluntarily entering a world I dominated, carrying nothing but hope. I had to keep my emotions in check. Not because of pride, but because fear lingered in my chest. Fear that she might leave. Fear that my son might regress. Fear that the fragile bond forming before my eyes would shatter if I misstepped. But there was no choice. She was here. She had chosen this. And for the first time in months I wasn't alone. By midweek, something remarkable happened. I arrived home from a late meeting to find Ayanda kneeling beside Liam's wheelchair, gently guiding his hands to imitate small, slow movements to the rhythm of soft drums. I leaned against the doorway watching silently. "You're home early," she whispered without looking up. "I had to see," I said softly. "I needed to see progress with my own eyes." Ayanda glanced up briefly and gave a small smile, one that didn't reach her eyes entirely. I noticed fatigue in her posture. She was pushing herself, giving her energy to a boy she barely knew, yet she radiated a determination that rivaled anything I had ever commanded in the boardroom. I swallowed, guilt gnawing at my chest. "Sir," she said suddenly, turning to me, "you don't need to sit there. You can help." "Help?" I echoed, surprised. "Yes," she said, voice firm. "You can sit beside him. Hold his hand. Speak to him. Don't think it's nothing. He feels everything." I hesitated. I had always led with control, not tenderness. And yet, I slowly walked forward, seating myself beside Liam. I took his small, fragile hand in mine. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, as Ayanda gently swayed her arms to the music, guiding Liam's fingers, his eyelids twitched. A faint sigh escaped him. I couldn't speak. I could only grip his hand tighter, feeling the first real connection in months. Ayanda smiled softly. "See? He knows you're here. He's learning to trust again." I nodded, swallowing hard. That evening, after Ayanda left, I found myself staring at the ceiling in my room. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her, Ayanda kneeling, swaying, coaxing Liam into movement. And every time, I felt a strange, unfamiliar sensation. Gratitude, hope, and something dangerously close to admiration. I hated admitting it, but the truth was undeniable. She had changed everything in a single week. And yet, I sensed that the real challenge was just beginning. Because the world outside our home didn't care about Liam's recovery. It didn't care about Ayanda. It didn't care about the fragile thread of hope that had begun to weave itself between us. By the end of the week, I made a decision. I summoned Ayanda into my office. "Sit," I said. She obeyed. "I want to know everything about you," I said quietly but firmly. She blinked, unsure. "Everything, sir?" "Yes," I said. "Not because I'm nosy. Not because I want control. But because I need to understand the person who has brought my son back to life." Her hands trembled slightly. She took a deep breath. "My parents died when I was very young," she said. "I took care of my younger siblings. I had to grow up fast. Dancing, it was the only thing that kept me sane. When I saw your son, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. I felt needed." I studied her. She looked vulnerable yet unbroken. Strong yet soft. Fearless yet cautious. "I see that," I said. "And you will be needed every day. I'm asking you to stay. Full-time. Permanent. Not as an employee, as a part of our family." She gasped softly. "Sir." "You don't have to answer now," I said. "Just think about it." And for the first time, I felt something I hadn't allowed myself in years. Trust. The next morning, Ayanda entered Liam's room, her eyes brighter than usual. "I've decided," she said softly. "I want to stay. I want to be here for him. And for you." I blinked. For a moment I thought I misheard. "For me?" I asked. She nodded. "You've been hurting too. And it's clear, you need someone you can rely on. Don't pretend you don't." I wanted to argue. I wanted to deny it. But deep down I knew she was right. I had been carrying my grief alone for months, hiding it behind anger, wealth, and pride. She had seen through it. "I'll need to talk to your doctors formally," I said, voice rough. "Make sure everything we do is safe." She nodded. "Of course." And just like that, the house felt lighter. By Friday, Liam's progress became undeniable. His fingers responded more consistently. His eyes followed Ayanda's every movement. And once, just once, he tried to lift his hand to clap along with the rhythm. Ayanda gasped softly. "He's learning faster than I thought." I swallowed hard. "We are learning together." And for the first time, I allowed myself to imagine something that had been impossible for months. A life beyond despair, a future where my son might walk again, or at least laugh again, and where grief didn't dominate every corner of our home. That weekend, I watched Ayanda dance in the living room, guiding Liam in gentle movements, coaxing him to interact. And I realized that the miracle wasn't just about movement. It wasn't just about therapy. It was about care. It was about attention. It was about someone seeing my son, not as a burden, not as a tragedy, but as a child who could still feel, who could still connect, who could still live. And that, I realized, was everything. The days blurred into a rhythm I hadn't known in months. Ayanda arrived each morning at precisely 3 p.m., her small figure carrying more presents than the entire mansion could contain. Liam responded to her in ways I had long stopped expecting. Tiny finger twitches, subtle blinks, even once, a soft hum that might have been laughter. It terrified me. Because hope is dangerous. I found myself obsessively checking his progress, following her guidance, sometimes even attempting movements myself. I felt ridiculous at first, fumbling through her gentle corrections. Yet slowly the room became lighter, brighter, warmer. It wasn't just Liam who was changing. It was me. For the first time in months, I could sit quietly without the gnawing weight of grief pressing my chest into my spine. For the first time I could laugh softly at her jokes or smile when Liam responded to her touch. Yet even as joy returned, the tension in the world outside our home remained. The media had begun sniffing around. Rumors of the miracle girl from Soweto spread like wildfire. A journalist from one of Johannesburg's top tabloids called, claiming they needed to cover this story about the billionaire and the dancer who made his son move. I refused the interview. Ayanda was not a spectacle. Liam was not a headline. I had no intention of allowing outsiders into our fragile bubble. But the pressure grew. And then came the visit from my sister, Thando. She arrived unannounced, her usual confidence hiding something sharper than curiosity, skepticism. "You've invited her into your house," she said flatly, eyes darting between Ayanda and Liam. "Do you realize what this looks like?" "I don't care what it looks like," I replied quietly, keeping my tone steady. "She's helping Liam. That's all that matters." Thando frowned. "You're still angry at yourself, aren't you? That your wife is gone? That your son—" "Yes," I admitted sharply. "But that's not her fault. Or his. And it's certainly not Ayanda's." She softened slightly, then studied Ayanda. "And her? She's what? A savior from the township?" "She's Liam's friend," I said firmly. "And mine in a way I didn't think I needed." Thando raised an eyebrow. "Friend? Don't lie to yourself, brother. This is bigger than friendship." I looked away. Maybe she was right. Maybe it was more complicated than I wanted to admit. But before I could respond, Ayanda spoke softly. "Sir, she doesn't need to judge me," she said. "I just want to help Liam. That's it." Her innocence, her courage, her refusal to be intimidated, every word she spoke pulled me deeper into admiration. And for the first time I realized something undeniable. I had never felt this protective of anyone in my life except my son. That evening, after Thando left, I sat beside Liam, watching Ayanda guide him through movements with patient care. I noticed something I hadn't before, the subtle way she encouraged him, not forcing, not demanding, simply inviting. It was beautiful, and it reminded me of everything I had lost. I had built empires. I had conquered markets. I had controlled lives. But none of that mattered when I saw my son smile, or hum, or attempt to move his hands. I realized that life was not about control. It was about love, and patience, and courage. I felt my chest tighten. A week later, something miraculous happened. Ayanda had been guiding Liam through a slow exercise, her hands barely touching his, when he suddenly shifted slightly in his wheelchair. His fingers twitched deliberately. His eyelids widened. And then, for the first time, he made a small, almost laugh-like sound. Ayanda gasped. "Liam, did you do that?" I swallowed hard. My throat tightened. He did." She laughed softly through her tears. "He's trying, sir. He's really trying." I knelt beside him, grasping his small hand. "Boy, you're incredible." Liam blinked at me, his gaze focused, deliberate. The moment was perfect, and yet it terrified me. Because perfection never lasts. The following day, Ayanda approached me privately. "Sir, I need to tell you something," she said, voice low. "What is it?" "My grandmother taught me something," she whispered. "Before you can heal someone else, you must heal yourself. Your son is responding because he feels your grief. You're holding back and he knows it." I froze. Her words pierced me. She had seen me, not just Liam, not just the mansion, not just the grief, but me. "And what do you suggest?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Let go," she said simply. "Stop pretending you're in control of the pain. Face it. And then, help him face it too." I clenched my jaw. I wanted to argue. I wanted to deny. But the truth was, she was right. That night I allowed myself to cry. Quietly in my office, the city lights spilling across the floor. I cried for my wife, for my son, for the months of despair. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a release. The next morning, the change was palpable. I entered Liam's room, shoulders looser, eyes lighter. Ayanda noticed immediately. "You look different today," she said softly. "I feel different," I admitted. "And I think Liam feels it too." As she guided him through movements, he responded more confidently, moving his hands in rhythm with her, blinking at her, and even attempting a weak smile. For the first time, I allowed myself to hope fully. And in that hope, I realized something else. I had fallen for Ayanda. Not like a fleeting attraction. Not like a desire born from gratitude. But like a man who had been shown light in darkness. Like a man who saw courage and purity and resilience all in one fragile human being. And it terrified me. Because nothing in my life had prepared me for this. By evening I made a decision. I would no longer hide my emotions. I would no longer pretend that the past months of grief made me untouchable. I would no longer pretend that I could shield my son, and myself, from the possibility of joy, of love, of connection. I would embrace it. Carefully, cautiously, but fully. Ayanda had brought life back into our home. It was time to let her bring life back into my heart as well. That night, I watched her leave, her silhouette framed by the Johannesburg skyline. I felt a strange mixture of pride, fear, and anticipation. Tomorrow, I would speak to her. Not as an employer. Not as a father. But as a man who had discovered hope and perhaps love where he least expected it. The morning sunlight poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Liam's room, casting a golden glow over the familiar hospital-like machines and the soft blankets. But something was different today. The air felt lighter. The house, usually weighed down by grief and silence, hummed with expectation. Ayanda entered first, her usual calm energy radiating confidence. She carried a small drum, a reminder that rhythm had become our lifeline over the past weeks. "Good morning, sir," she said softly, glancing at me with a faint smile. "Morning," I replied, my voice catching slightly. For the first time in months I felt normal. Not the man hardened by tragedy, not the billionaire consumed by guilt, not the father paralyzed by helplessness. Just human. I followed her into Liam's room. Liam was awake, eyes wide, alert, and most importantly focused on her. I felt my chest tighten. He had been responding better and better each day, but today felt like a turning point. Ayanda kneeled beside him, placing the drum carefully on the floor. "Are you ready, little warrior?" she whispered. He blinked and gave a small, deliberate twitch of his hand. "Yes," I breathed. She guided his hands onto the drum, her fingers lightly touching his, teaching him how to tap the rhythm. At first it was uneven. His fingers barely moved. But then, gradually he began to follow the beat. A small tap, then another. His eyes widened, a spark igniting in them that I had not seen in months. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my composure. He's doing it," I whispered. Ayanda smiled softly. "He's learning to believe in his body again. And in himself." And then it happened. Liam lifted his right hand fully for the first time. Not a twitch. Not a reflex. A deliberate movement, guided by will. He tapped the drum. Once. Twice. And then he laughed. A soft, breathy sound that filled the room like music. Ayanda gasped, tears streaming down her face. "He's laughing." I felt a lump rise in my throat. I wanted to scream with relief, to fall to my knees and cry. But instead I held his hand tighter, feeling every heartbeat, every tiny triumph. "My boy, my beautiful boy," I whispered. Liam's gaze shifted to me and he blinked slowly, deliberately, intentionally. His hand moved again, this time reaching toward mine. I grasped it, overwhelmed. And in that moment I realized something. We had all been broken. But together we were becoming whole again. Ayanda's voice brought me back. "Sir, we need to keep going. He can do more than this." I nodded, still holding Liam's hand. She guided him to try more complex movements. Lifting his arms, tapping with both hands, following the rhythm of the drum with his feet in small motions. And with each attempt, Liam responded. The room was alive with sound, movement, and laughter. A home filled with love and hope, not silence and sorrow. I stepped back and watched, my heart swelling with a mixture of pride, awe, and something more complicated. Ayanda had changed everything, not just for Liam but for me. Later that afternoon, after Liam had rested, I asked Ayanda to sit with me in the living room. "I need to say something," I began, my voice heavier than usual. You've done more for my son than I ever thought possible. And for me. I don't even know how to describe it." She looked at me cautiously, unsure. Sir, I'm just doing what I can. No, I said firmly. You've done what no amount of money, therapy, or care could do. You've brought joy back into this house. You've brought hope back to my son. And, to me. Her eyes widened slightly. I can't explain why or how, but I trust you. Completely. And I'm asking you to stay. Not just as his companion, but as a part of this family. Her lips trembled, and for a moment she looked overwhelmed. Then she nodded slowly. I want to stay. I want to help him, and to help you heal too. I exhaled, the weight of months of grief and fear finally lifting slightly. Thank you, Ayanda. Truly. The following weeks became a new rhythm for all of us. Liam progressed steadily. Each day brought small victories, moving his fingers more deliberately, responding to sound, laughing more openly, even attempting to lift his arms higher. Ayanda remained by his side, patient, gentle, unwavering. And I learned to be present, to listen, to hold my son's hand without fear, to speak words of encouragement, and to allow myself to hope again. For the first time, I felt the fragile threads of family being rewoven. One evening, as the sun dipped below the Johannesburg skyline, painting the room in shades of orange and gold, Ayanda asked me something I hadn't expected. Sir, what happens after Liam fully recovers? I paused. I don't know, I admitted. I've spent so long surviving that I forgot to plan for living. She smiled softly. Then maybe it's time to live. Her words lingered in the room like a promise. Weeks later, a remarkable change occurred. Liam, under Ayanda's careful guidance, managed to lift both arms and clap along to the rhythm of her drums. The laughter that followed was pure, unrestrained, a sound that had been absent from this house for far too long. I watched, tears in my eyes, and realized that the impossible had become reality. My son had rediscovered his joy, his movement, and his voice. And it was all because of her. That evening, I sat with Ayanda on the terrace, the city lights of Johannesburg twinkling below. You've changed everything, I said quietly. She shook her head. No, sir. Liam did. I only guided him. No, I insisted. You gave him hope. You gave me hope. And you gave us a family again. For the first time in months, I allowed myself to be vulnerable. I reached for her hand gently, unsure if she would withdraw. But she didn't. She held it, warm, steady, and reassuring. I never expected this, I confessed. I never expected to feel this again. Feel what? She asked softly. Life, I said. And love. She smiled, eyes glistening. Then don't waste it. I nodded. And in that moment I knew our lives would never be the same. The next morning, Liam attempted to stand with the help of Ayanda and the therapists. He wobbled at first, fear and strength clashing inside him. But then, with determination in his eyes, he took a few careful steps. I stood beside him, heart pounding, feeling the triumph in every fiber of my being. Liam. I cheered, tears streaming. You're walking. He looked at me, a wide, genuine smile spreading across his face. And in that smile, I saw the end of months of despair, and the beginning of a new chapter. Ayanda knelt beside him, holding his hands. You did it, Liam. You did it. I watched them both, my heart full. The miracle wasn't magic. It was courage, perseverance, love. And it had come in the form of a young dancer from Soweto who dared to give hope where there was none. Weeks later, as life returned to a new normal, I reflected on everything that had happened. Ayanda remained with us, guiding Liam, teaching him, and slowly becoming a part of our family. She had become more than a companion, she was a friend, a healer, and perhaps something I had never allowed myself to hope for, love. Liam laughed freely now, moved with confidence, and greeted the world with joy. And I learned that even in the depths of grief, miracles could happen. Not because of wealth or power, but because of courage, compassion, and the human heart's incredible capacity to heal. I took a deep breath, looking out at the city that had once felt so cold. Johannesburg glimmered in the distance, and for the first time, I felt truly at peace. Because we had survived the impossible. Because love had returned to our home. Because my son was alive. And because she, Ayanda, had shown us all what it meant to truly hope. And in that hope, we found life again.